Hey, welcome back to the shop. This is Zach over at NV Woodworks. Today we're going to be doing double dye stabilizing. So infusing wood with color while stabilizing it. So stay tuned and I'll walk you through my process. Alright, so overall this process is not difficult. A lot of people think that there's like trickery or magic involved in it. It's really actually pretty simple. I have a couple of tips and tricks that I can kind of share that will probably get you better results. Pretty simple process as long as you're familiar with stabilizing or you've been doing it for a little bit. Now, the overall process, I consider it to be kind of a two-stage process. There's going to be the highlight stage where you're imparting some color to the wood, but you're not going to run full vacuum on that first stage or anything like that. You're just going to soak the blanks. On the second stage, you're going to put the blanks under full vacuum, and that's going to be kind of the primary color. Now, the reason that you don't do it where you vacuum first and then add another step of vacuuming is because if you run full vacuum and you stabilize the wood, it's going to be pretty well saturated with resin the first time, and so the second time you try and add another color, it's going to be extremely difficult to get color into the blanks. Now on the first stage, all you're going to do is let the blanks soak, and this is kind of where you can kind of play with things. The longer you let it soak, the more color it's going to absorb into the blank. And so if you're just going for a little bit here and there, you really only need to let it soak probably for like 15 to 20 minutes. Now, the other thing is it depends on what kind of wood you're using. Some of them soak up this dye and the resin really quickly. Others don't do it as much. So this is kind of where you're going to have to play with things, and even within the same wood species, you may get different results, with two different batches of wood. Now, the other thing that I like to do during this first stage is add multiple colors. Now, I will caution you, if you dunked a blank in red completely and then you dunked it in yellow, the thing's going to be orange in the end. That's all you're going to get. But if you're careful and you just kind of add color to different ends and kind of, especially on square blocks that are kind of odd shaped, you can actually get, 2 or 3 colors added on this first stage. And then, the dye is going to bleed in the middle, but that really even accentuates those colors and the rainbow kind of effect even more. So it's really fun. The first stage is actually, I think, the funnest stage for me, where you can kind of just get crazy. Once you've baked that first color in, this is kind of an important step. You're going to want to sand off any excess cactus juice that's on the outside. And, I literally pull out the belt sander and just scrape it off. You want to use a pretty low grit, like 80, maybe even 40, and really scrape off that stuff and even sand up the wood. What that's going to do is it's going to help on the second stage of vacuum. If you left all that crusty stuff on the outside, basically, it would make it more difficult to suck the air out when you're doing full vacuum and then get cactus juice in. So get all that stuff off, and the second round is going to be a lot easier. All right, so what type of dye and how much dye should you use in your cactus juice? That's probably one of the most important things, and I think this is one of the big stumbling blocks a lot of people have with this. I use Alumilite dyes, and I believe that most people that are doing dye stabilizing in this manner with the vacuum and all that, they're probably using Alumilite dyes as well. One of the nice things about Alumilite dyes is it cross-links into the resin when it cures, and so it's kind of baked in there. It cures into the resin. That's a good thing. Now, how much you use? The rule of thumb that I learned from Curtis is about 1 ounce, which is the small bottle of Alumilite dye, 1 ounce of dye per half gallon of cactus juice. That ought to get you in the game. Now, you may want to play with it. In some cases, you may need a little bit more. Some cases, not as much. But that should probably get you some pretty good results. Now, I also want to mention there are a couple of colors that do not work for stabilizing, for dye stabilizing. And that's because they're a pigment-based dye. Pigments are larger chunks of color, let's say, and they can't get sucked into the cellular structure during the vacuum process. So the ones that do not work, that I'm aware of at least, are white and all the fluorescents. Black is a little bit thicker too. That may be a little bit difficult, but I think that one's okay. So just watch out for white and any of the fluorescents. They're not going to work. So everything else, as far as I know, works fine though. All right, so for the second stage, that's going to be your full vacuum. You're going to do it the way you would normally stabilize wood. You're going to fill your chamber with the wood. You're going to cover the wood with dyed cactus juice, and you're gonna make sure you give it about 3 inches above the top of the wood with cactus juice, and then run the vacuum pump, you know, on full. Now, I will say that this is probably going to take a little bit longer than you're used to, just normal stabilizing, and that's because you've already baked in resin on the inside, and that kind of gums things up. It's going to take a little bit longer to evacuate all the air and get that resin in there. Once it's done though, once there's no more bubbles coming out of there, then it's time to soak them. And I would actually recommend leave them for like 24 hours. Like, soak them a good amount of time. That will really get you good full penetration with the cactus juice and dye. Once that's done, you go and bake them at 200 degrees like normal. And once that's done, you got some double dyed blanks basically. Now, technically you could just keep going through these processes. You could, again, you want to sand off any excess and then run full vacuum again if you want to do that. But every successive stage is going to take significantly longer under vacuum for it to actually get all the air out and get that cactus juice that's dyed into the wood. So I will warn you about that. I actually don't do more than 2 stages because I just don't have time, and I don't really want to run my pump for days, and that's what it's going to take. All right, so overall, like I said, the process is pretty simple. Just soak them, bake them, and then vacuum. Now again, make sure that you sand between stages. And make sure you sand the end grain too, anything like that. Just sand the entire blank, that will help with the vacuum stage. And also make sure you're using enough dye. Now I quickly wanted to mention material selection here at the end. That's, I think, another thing that people kind of have problems with. They do this and they say, oh, they didn't really turn out that great. Well, what I found is the really super spectacular, highly figured woods that would look good with just a coat of oil on them, they take dye the best. They're going to look the best in the end. If you just kind of drop in a straight grain piece of wood, it's probably not going to be amazing. It'll impart color, but it's not going to be wicked cool. So, this round I did Buckeye Burl for the first time, and this stuff, man, this stuff's awesome. It's got all these little weird divots and things in it. Another thing I want to mention is spalting actually acts as a color barrier, so you can kind of soak it in one color, and that's going to stop the color from bleeding through that spalting, and so you can use that to your advantage. That's a little kind of tip I can throw in there. But overall, pretty simple process, like I said. So I hope this helps out. I hope you guys get some awesome double dye stabilized blanks made. And if you have any comments or questions, definitely leave those down below. I'm out there on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram posting what I'm up to in the shop daily and weekly, so you can kind of catch up with me there. I'm also doing live streaming on Twitch, so every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, we're doing Dunkin' Junk, where we throw in some random materials and casting resin just to kind of see what do we get out of it, The audience gets involved, they choose the material, and then help with colors and what type of resin, what kind of blanks we're making, all that stuff. We have a good time. So hope to see you out there. So until next time, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.